This video is sponsored by Classic Football Shirts, the best place to get your classic and vintage football shirts. To get cheap retro Palace shirts, click the link in the description below. And for an extra 10% off, use the code CFSPJ10 at checkout. Hello and welcome to the Crystal Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook, and in today's podcast, I'll be looking over the game against Leicester City by bringing you my match review, player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you interviews with Roy Hodgson, James McArthur, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Christian Benteke after the game. So let's begin. Palace put in a 5-star performance to move towards touching distance of safety by thrashing 10-man Leicester City at Selhurst Park to record their biggest ever Premier League victory in the process. The Eagles found themselves 2 ahead of the break as Wilfried, Zaha and James McArthur combined to get each other on the scoresheet before the Foxes were reduced to 10 men when Marc Albrighton pulled back Zaha when he was clear through on goal. Following that, it was a matter of how many Roy Hodgson's team wanted to score, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Aanholt added late goals before Christian Benteke rounded off the scoring from the penalty spot to haul the Eagles to 38 points and take a huge step towards extending their stay in the Premier League to a 6th season. They were nearly gifted the opener after 8 minutes when Yohan Cabaye swung a corner into the box and Ben Hamer attempted to punch it to safety. However, the ball span backwards off his fist, allowing Sakho-Tomkins to head towards goal, but Kelechi Iheanacho was on the line to clear. Having come so close to grabbing the opening goal, 7 minutes later the hosts were indebted to Joe Ward for keeping them level. Iheanacho slipped in Jamie Vardy, and the English hitman arrowed a shot past Wayne Hennessy, but fortunately for the Eagles, Ward rushed back and provided an excellent goal line clearance of his own. And that proved crucial as on 17 minutes, Hodgson's team took the lead thanks to a wonderfully crafted team goal. Loftus-Cheek breezed past a couple of Fox players on the left touchline and combined with the overlapping Van Aanholt to surge towards the box. The ball was then fed to Cabaye, who knocked it into McArthur, and the Scotsman backheeled it to Zaha, who drove the ball high past Hamer to score his 8th of the campaign. He nearly made it 9 just before the half-an-hour mark, when Wes Morgan botched a clearance straight to Zaha, who instinctively stabbed it towards the bottom corner. But this time Hamer was able to push it around his post to safety, but on 38 minutes he turned provider to double the Eagles' advantage. Van Aanholt began the move on the left and found Zaha inside the box, and he fed the ball across it from McArthur, who took a touch before swivelling and firing it into the net past the outstretched Hamer to score his first goal since January. That gave Palace a commanding lead at the break, and 10 minutes after the restart, Leicester's chances of getting something from the game were made even harder when Zaha chased the ball over the top towards goal and Albrighton hauled him down, handing Mike Dean no option but to reduce the Foxes to 10 men. After that, it looked as though Palace would be the only ones adding to the scoreline, and after some more brilliant intricate build-up play, McArthur had another sight on goal and attempted to chip the ball over Hamer but found the side netting, and Andros Townsend whipped the free kick wide of the far post soon after as the men in red and blue tried to seal the victory. And with 8 minutes remaining they did just that. Mamadou Sakho broke up a Leicester attack and slanted forwards over the halfway line before slotting in Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who capped off an excellent display by rounding Hamer and tapping into the net, which would have impressed the watching Gareth Southgate. Jeffrey Slutt was then introduced off the bench, and he played part in rubbing salt into his former club's wounds as the Eagles added a 4th within 85 minutes. This time it was Zaha sending Slutt through on goal, and after the Ghanaian shot straight at the keeper, another former Fox in Van Aanholt was in the perfect place to curl the ball into the unguarded net. The icing was then put on the cake for Hodgson's team in the final minute when Benteke was brought down inside the box by Harry Maguire and Luka Milivojevic stepped aside to let the Belgian take the penalty. Roared on by the Holmes their road end, the striker slipped as he took it, but it flew past Hamer to register his first goal in SE25 since last May, making it the perfect day for the unbeaten in 4 Eagles. It was an afternoon to remember for Crystal Palace as they racked up 5 goals in an emphatic win against Leicester City on Saturday. The Eagles recorded their biggest ever win since returning to the Premier League, with Palace brushing aside the sorry Foxes with a 5-star showing. But there were plenty of talking points from the game. Here are some of them. Number 1. Sakho's mixed afternoon. Not for the first time this season, Mamadou Sakho almost cost Palace with a sloppy back pass. In the early exchanges they looked to be no trouble as he received the ball on the left-hand side of his own box, but inexplicably almost presented the ball to Vardy with a loose back pass. Fortunately for the Frenchman, Wayne Hennessy was alert to make the challenge and get there first to deny the dangerous Vardy. To be fair to the former Liverpool man, he recovered from the error but was guilty of a couple of casual clearances in the second half, from which Leicester failed to make the Eagles pay. But Sakho then showed his quality too with a slide rule pass for Ruben Loftus-Cheek to score Palace's third goal, with the Frenchman splitting the Fox's defence wide open. Number 2. Are Palace better off playing without a recognised centre forward? Once again Palace impressed going forward, and once again it was without having a recognised striker in the starting 11. Wilfried Zaha was again instrumental as the Eagles' main threat and caused Leicester defenders plenty of problems, whilst he also got another goal to make it 4-4 for him. But it wasn't just Zaha, and Palace had threats across the pitch, with the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek and James McArthur causing problems for the Leicester defence from midfield. Christian Benteke did come off the bench to win the penalty and did score his third goal of the season, but is there a case for him staying on the bench? Last week against Watford, Palace lacked a focal point up front, but not here as they ran Leicester ragged. Number 3. The turning point. There were more than a few surprised Crystal Palace fans when the team news was announced at 2 PM, with Joe Ward keeping his place despite a poor showing against Watford last weekend. But he justified his inclusion ahead of the academy product Aaron Wan-Bissaka with a vital block on the line to deny Jamie Vardy in the 15th minute. There were question marks over whether Vardy was offside, but Ward showed superb awareness and determination to get back and prevent the Leicester man's shot from going in. And it proved crucial as just 2 minutes later Palace were ahead, with the Eagles never looking back after Wilfried Zaha's opener. Number 4. Palace or Barcelona? Crystal Palace may play in red and blue like Barcelona, but they're not often compared to the Catalan giants in terms of their playing style. But the opening goal at Selhurst Park would not have looked out of place at the Camp Nou, such was the quality and style. Number 4. Palace or Barcelona? Crystal Palace may play in red and blue like Barcelona, but they're not often compared to the Catalan giants in terms of their playing style. But the opening goal at Selhurst Park would not have looked out of place at the Camp Nou, such was the style and quality of the strike. It was a superb passing move from the Eagles as they piled men forward, with James McArthur doing his best Messi impression with a sublime back pass into the path of Zaha, and he made no mistake with the finish, opening up his body to fire past Ben Hammer and give Palace the lead they deserved for their early pressure. That was not the only time that Palace showed flashes of Barcelona-esque play though, with Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Zaha in particular showing off their array of tricks and flicks. Number 5. The sending off. When Wilfried Zaha went down under a challenge from Marc Albrighton early in the second half, it looked a certain foul and a red card. But referee Mike Dean took advice from his assistant Ian Husson before making a call to send the Leicester man off, much to Albrighton's dismay. The former Aston Villa... Number 5. The sending off. When Wilfried Zaha went down under a challenge from Marc Albrighton early in the second half, it looked a certain foul and a red card. But referee Mike Dean took advice from his assistant Ian Husson before making a call to send the Leicester man off, much to Albrighton's dismay. The former Aston Villa player protested his innocence, but BBC pundit Alan Shearer said on Match of the Day that he felt that the officials had made the correct decision, with Leicester picking up their 5th red card of the season, the most of any top-flight side. And number 6, Macca's magic. James McArthur has a knack of popping up with important goals, and his ability to ghost inside the box came in handy here once again. He was as usual industrious himself in the midfield, but also showed what he can do in and around the 18-yard box, with a superb back heel for Zaha's opener, and then showed composure to turn and finish from 15 yards out to make it 2-0. He is an unsung hero in the Palace side, but he stood out here, getting a goal and an assist for the first time since September 2016, and for just the 3rd time in his career. So I'm now going to move on to my player ratings, but before I start, don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Crystal Palace for all the latest Palace news. Also, if you're on Facebook, do feel free to join our Facebook group, which is a really great place to join in with discussions and also share your opinions with other fans. And much like a forum, it's a great place to upload any videos, photos and any news articles you found online that you want to share with other Palace fans, and of course it's a great place to do so. Found online that you want to share with other Palace fans, then of course you can do so in the Facebook group. So like I said there in that small little introduction, you know, if you do want a place to get all the latest Palace news, loads of polls, loads of opinions and just loads of sort of photos and everything really about the club, especially obviously coming the end of the season, there'll be loads of, you know, polls on there in terms of goal of the season and player of the season. So if you do want to get involved in that and obviously have your opinion heard, then of course do follow us on both our Twitter and Facebook page. And of course, if you also want to share your opinion, obviously so that other fans can see it and so that other fans can comment on it, as well as you reading what other fans have to say, then you can also head over to the Facebook group. Obviously you'll be accepted into there, and of course that's a great place, much like a forum in terms of just getting involved with other fans. And if there's any news articles you found that we haven't put on our Facebook or Twitter page, of course stick that up on the Facebook group so other fans can see it. And the same can go for videos and photos. You know, if you do want to share anything with any other Palace fans, whether that's a display, whether that's you've actually caught a goal from the stands, a video of it, whatever it is, obviously do feel free to drop it in the Facebook group. Now, another great place to share your opinion is in the YouTube comments. So if you are listening to the podcast on YouTube, then do feel free to drop a comment below the video with your player ratings, rating the players' performances from one of my views of players' performances. But they can also read the comment section and, you know, have a greater view of how not only me doing the podcast feels about the performance, but also how other listeners thought about it as well. So if you do want to get involved, and I do read every comment, so if you do want to get involved, then of course do feel free to drop that below. And even if you don't want to do player ratings, and even if you are a Leicester fan, do also feel free to drop your views of the game. You know, obviously 5-0 win, great for Palace, but bad for Leicester. So from a Palace perspective, comment below your favourite goal or something along them lines. And of course, if you're a Leicester fan, do comment below what you think went wrong, and whether you do think Marc Albrighton one card was a red card, because, you know, to be honest with me, there's not much debate there, but I can clearly say that actually that moment changed the game in terms of we were 2-0 up, and then we went on to concede to score the 3 other goals, and Leicester conceded them straight after Albrighton got sent off. So maybe that was a bit of correlation there between him getting sent off and us scoring the 3 goals. So do comment below with your views there. Now, if you do want to follow any of these social media pages and join the Facebook group, then do check all the links that will be in the description below. But I'm now going to move on to my player ratings, starting in goal with Wayne Hennessy, who I am going to give a 7. Was alert to deny Jamie Vardy early on as the Leicester man looked to capitalise on an error from Mamadou Sakho. Didn't have too many saves to make. So Wayne Hennessy here, I've given him a 7, and much like his performances have been recently, you know, they've been fairly decent. He's kept 2 clean sheets in a row, you know, against Watford and against Leicester here. We've obviously conceded none, scored 5, so overall the team performance was great. But in terms of the goalkeeping department, 2 clean sheets in a row, you know, you've got to give credit to the goalkeeper, because realistically, even though he didn't have many saves to make in this game and obviously last week as well, I still do think he looks fairly confident and his performances are really good. Now, the main reason I've given him a 7, because overall, because he didn't make any saves, I realistically could have given him a 6. But the main reason for I've given him a 7 is just that save from Jamie Vardy early on in the game. You know, we were just passing the ball around the back, trying to obviously get the ball forward. Joe Ward, I believe it was, passed the ball back to Hennessy. Hennessy's, you know, got it out to Mamadou Sakho. Mamadou Sakho's been closed down, so he tries to back pass it to Hennessy, but doesn't quite have enough power on it. And obviously Jamie Vardy, having the pace he does, runs through on goal. And of course Wayne Hennessy, fantastic, you know, legs in terms of just getting there, getting in between Jamie Vardy to clear the ball away. And it wasn't just like he got a touch on it and, you know, the defence had to clear it. He actually put his foot through it without causing a foul on Jamie Vardy, which was absolutely fantastic to see. And obviously, even though it's an error from Mamadou Sakho, obviously we don't really want to see that. But the fact that Hennessy's able to, you know, make up, or he's able to recover from the error from another player in the team is obviously great to see as well. But, you know, Hennessy, beginning of the season, doesn't make that save or doesn't make that block with his feet. He'll probably just try and make himself big, and Vardy will probably chip him. But what we've seen in the last few weeks with the improvement in his performances, but also since the new goalkeeping coach has come in, we've seen him actually trying to claim things more, being more commanding, and also just looking more confident with his tackle, with his challenges like that, with his catches. And that's certainly what he done here. You know, he saw that Jamie Vardy was coming on, he saw that it was a bad pass from Mamadou Sakho, but of course straight away went to clear the ball, which was great to see. But overall, Wayne Hennessy, you know, I can't really discuss too much more about his game, because other than that save or that block to deny Jamie Vardy early on in the game, there isn't really too much to say about his performance. But what I've really got to say is that although he doesn't have to make many saves in the last few games, because the defence has been pretty solid, even when that is the case, and, you know, the few chances that the opposition do get, he's still able to do quite well with them. And that's what you want from a goalkeeper. You know, you want them to not necessarily be involved all the time, but the times where they have to be called upon to make a save, you want them to do that. And certainly that's what Wayne Hennessy's done in the last few weeks. So Wayne Hennessy here, another confident performance from him, and a 7 for him. Now to move on to the right back, Joe Ward, who I'm going to give a 6. preferred again to Aaron Wan-Bissaka and made a superb block on the line to deny Jamie Vardy on the occasion that Leicester threatened in the first half. So Joe Ward here, I've given him a 6, and although his performance was absolutely dreadful against Watford last weekend, I said he could have been sent off, he was just terrible defensively and also offensively. Obviously, most of us, including myself, were calling for him to be pulled out the side and for Aaron Wan-Bissaka to get put back into the side when you consider how well he's performed recently. But in terms of Ward staying in the side, there's a saying that you stick with a winning side. I was perfectly fine with that in terms of every position but the right back, purely because Joe Ward had an absolute horror show, obviously against Watford, and obviously at Brighton before that he wasn't exactly solid there as well. So the last 2 games Joe Ward played, he hasn't been fantastic. Obviously coming into this game, it was either going to be make or break. He was either going to have an average performance or a good performance, or he was just going to be terrible like he has done in the last few games. And to be honest, looking at his game, I've given him a 6. It was sort of a very mediocre performance from him. But unlike against Watford, there were no clear errors from him, and overall he was a good asset to us in terms of us keeping a clean sheet. Now, of course, once again, preferred to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I discussed this quite a lot in detail last weekend, but I do think that Aaron Wan-Bissaka, at the moment, based on this season's form, I do think he'll be the guy to play next season, and certainly should have deserved to play this weekend, purely because in the fact that how good he's been and the fact that he's got pace, not only to get back and defend, but also to go forward, and that's something that Joe Ward does. But do comment below your thoughts whether you do prefer Aaron or Joe Ward. But personally for me, I do prefer Wan-Bissaka, but I understand, especially for the Brighton game, why he was brought in, Joe Ward. But if he carries on with mediocre performances like this, I do think we need to bring Wan-Bissaka back in, purely because he's been playing fantastic this season. So I'd rather have a player who's playing fantastic and maybe a bit fatigued, because his first team action in his career, his first sort of length of time in the first team, he may be a bit fatigued, but I'd rather have a slightly fatigued Aaron Wan-Bissaka who's playing fantastic, as opposed to a Joe Ward who's not really playing that great. But in terms of the good thing he done in the game, some could argue I should give him a 7, and he was in the BBC team of the week, so obviously some people are giving him credit for his performance. I personally think he was quite mediocre, but there was one block in particular which was absolutely fantastic. Once again, Jamie Vardy causing problems up front for Leicester, got through on goal. Hennessy's come out, so there's no way he's going to save it. Jamie Vardy's hit a shot, really good power on it. It was going to go in bottom corner, and Joe Ward, who actually was playing Jamie Vardy onside, so realistically that was the first mistake from Joe Ward. But the fact that even though he was playing him offside, the fact that he was able to get onto the line and flick the ball off, even though he didn't look like he knew much about it, the fact that he was able to actually get back and flick the ball away and clear the danger and stop that goal scoring chance at 0-0 was of course great to see as well. And that was probably, in my opinion, one of the only occasions that Leicester really threatened in the first half. Leicester, obviously 5-0 win, you're going to say actually Leicester got dominated for the majority of the game. Yes, that was the case in the fact that we won 5-0, but I did see sort of at 4-0 towards the end of the game, they started to try and get back into the game, had a few chances, but realistically 5-0 win, complete domination from Palace. And certainly the one chance that Leicester did have in the game, it was Joe Ward who stopped it from going in, so we've got to give him credit there. But like I've said, great goal line clearance, that's similar to what he does all the time. He may not be fantastic, but he does fantastic clearances off the line or fantastic headers off the line. He does things like this in games which stand out, but realistically his performances recently and of course sort of beginning of the season haven't been great. But I'm sure if he can get another run in the side, and with that competition of Wan-Bissaka and Tim Fosu-Mensah, hopefully that will improve his game. And to be honest, I suppose you could say it was like the Wardy of old. He's got competition back, he's getting a run in the team, and he's starting to get back into the rhythm of the things, but he's still not as good as we know he can be, and he's certainly not as good as the high standards set by Aaron Wan-Bissaka in the last few weeks. So Joe Ward here playing in the right back, not the best game from him, but he did get that clearance off the line from Jamie Vardy to keep it 0-0, and of course in terms of us keeping a clean sheet, that was really important. So Joe Ward here, a 6 for him. Now to move on to the centre-back Mamadou Sakho, who I'm going to give a 7. almost gifted Vardy with the opener with a loose back pass early on, but was rescued by his goalkeeper. It was fairly solid after that in terms of interceptions, blocks and clearances. There are a few times where, like the word maverick, he does act like a maverick and just does some mad things. And especially, you know, we've just started the game, about 15 minutes in, or I think it was even less than that, probably 5 minutes in, and he's almost set up Jamie Vardy for the opener. So I talked about, obviously, Wayne Hennessy making that fantastic block in terms of getting down, diving to the ball and clearing it. Obviously, he wouldn't have had to make that clearance if it wasn't for Mamadou Sakho giving that weak pass, you know, back. But of course, rescued by the goalkeeper, that's what you expect, you know. Occasionally your defence is going to make mistakes and you're going to have to, you know, rescue them and clear the danger from that. And of course, that's what Hennessy done because that's his job. But of course, it would be, in an ideal world, we wouldn't be having someone like Sakho make that mistake in the first place. Now, although this is creeping into this game, you know, sort of these little mistakes here and there, or lapses of concentration where, you know, he's just a bit casual sometimes. If you put them aside, you know, there's maybe one or two passes or missed headers or where he ducks down instead of getting to the ball. There are a few moments like this in every game for Sakho, but if you put them aside, he is a fantastic defender. And like I've said already, you know, this season, if he can just cut out these little bits of, you know, these little maverick moments, as I like to call them, then I'm sure he'll improve even more, because he's a very solid defender at the minute, and we saw this season, last season, how good he is and how fantastic he is. But if he can just get rid of these things here, like he did here against Leicester, then that will improve his game even more. But to be honest, after he made that mistake in terms of that weak back pass that Vardy almost scored from, I thought he was really solid after that in terms of making clearances, interceptions and blocks like he normally does, and I've said that quite a few times already. But in terms of things he was guilty of, so in the first half he obviously was at fault for that weak back pass, which almost gave Vardy a goal. But in terms of just being casual in a game, that was quite a lot, and especially in the second half, you know, there were a few sort of casual passes where, you know, rather than sort of just playing the safe ball to a fullback or back to the goalkeeper, he'll try and do a long ball and it doesn't quite get to a player and Leicester get back possession, or whether it's just a clearance where he just clears it goes out for a throw-in, or it just goes to a Leicester player. Whatever it was, there were a few sort of casual clearances in the game where obviously it's not great. But if you look at his overall game, if you take away these few little mistakes here, he had an absolutely fantastic performance. Now, obviously, these mistakes is the main reason I've not given him an 8, but you could argue I should give him an 8 when you consider that moment of magic where he literally ran probably about 30 yards and then he just chipped the ball or passed the ball right through the back line of Leicester, straight to Loftus-Cheek, and obviously Loftus-Cheek ran to the goalkeeper and scored. So, of course, he wasn't very good, you know, especially in the first half with his passing because it was quite casual. But that one where he picked up the ball from the edge of his own area, ran onto the other, or run into Leicester's half of the pitch, and then just put a lovely, fantastic ball which cut through the Leicester defence right to Ruben Loftus-Cheek. That was absolutely fantastic. And, you know, in terms of assist of the season, you know, there isn't an award for that, but certainly that's got to be up there with one of the assists of the season, purely based on the fact that this Mamadou Sakho playing as a centre-back, he ran, you know, probably, like I said, 20 to 30 yards he's run, then he's just released this fantastic ball to Loftus-Cheek, which was rightly timed, as well as just being weighted just right. And obviously Loftus-Cheek was able to do the rest in terms of scoring from that. So, of course, Mamadou Sakho was pretty decent defensively in terms of making his interceptions, blocks and tackles. Yes, obviously you could argue he should get an 8 for that, but then when you consider obviously the mistakes he made in terms of almost giving Vardy a goal or being casual, that's probably what brings it down to a 7. But then you could also argue, along with his good defending, you probably should give him an 8 for that defence splitting pass as well. So there'd be quite a lot of debate, and do comment below what you think. But I just do think that the fact that he's just a maverick sometimes is what brings his performances down, because if he hadn't have gifted Vardy that chance, I would have given him an 8, because he would have had an absolutely fantastic performance which was flawless without any errors. But like I've said already, Mamadou Sakho fairly solid again, and once again solid partnership alongside James Tomkins. But like I've said, what a pass for the third goal, and for that alone he probably deserves an 8, but I'm going to give him a 7. Now to move on to his centre-back partner, James Tomkins, who I'm going to give a 7. Once again looked assured at the back for Palace and was rarely troubled, despite having the pace and threat of Jamie Vardy to contend with. So James Tomkins here, I've given him a 7, and I do find myself quite regularly just repeating the same thing about James Tomkins week in, week out, because his performances, more often than not, are basically the same every game. He's a very consistent player, and he's not only consistent in terms of just being consistent, his performances are the same. He's consistent in the fact that his performances are always to a high level. So it's not just like he maintains the same level. It's the fact that the thing that's impressive is the fact that he is consistent with the high standards that he sets himself. But in terms of this performance here, once again did look assured at the back, and you know, much like what I talked about in Sakho in terms of interceptions, blocks, that's exactly what we saw here. And in terms of getting the clean sheet, it was fully deserved for his performance, a good reward for a good performance. But to be honest, although he was quite comfortable and quite assured at the back, like I've said already, Leicester only had 1 or 2 chances, or clear-cut chances in the game. So realistically, you know, James Tomkins didn't really have that much to do because he was rarely troubled. And you know that's quite funny when you consider, you know, they've got the pace of Jamie Vardy and Iheanacho up front. So you've got 2 players with lots of pace there who can drift alongside each other. So you've got players there who can cause problems for Leicester. And obviously on the day, losing 5-0, they obviously didn't. But that just proved that even though they got that quality up front, Tomkins was so good alongside Sakho in the fact that they were rarely troubled. Obviously because they dealt with them really well. And you know, something I talked about last weekend in terms of the strong partnership, the good partnership with Tomkins and Sakho, it once again was shown here in terms of they've played, I'm not sure exactly of the figures, but they've played, I think it's probably about 15 games together. They've only lost 7 of them, and you know, they've drawn the rest, which just shows how good of a solid partnership they are together. Now, do correct me if I'm wrong with the figures, because obviously I haven't got it in front of me here, but it is quite impressive in the fact that they've played about 15 games together, and they've lost none of them basically, and they've only conceded about 7 goals as well, which just makes it even more impressive. Is the fact that obviously they've played together quite a lot, but they've had their injuries, but when they do play together, they're a really solid partnership, conceding not that many goals, but also just being a real threat, not in terms of offensively, but in terms of just being a really solid partnership at the back. But to be honest, I find myself quite often repeating what I say with James Tomkins, but it was another solid performance from him here. The main reason I didn't really give him an 8 is because there was nothing outstanding in the game. So normally we see a fantastic sliding tackle or a header off the line or something like that, which was quite good. We didn't quite see that in this game here, which is the reason I've given him a 7. But we're still going to give him credit because he was one of the players who was quite important in terms of keeping that clean sheet. Now, in terms of his attacking threat, we know he's normally quite good from set pieces. There was one corner early on in the game, clear header for him, or the goalkeeper punched it terribly, and it came straight to James Tomkins. He's headed it down, and if it wasn't for the striker Iheanacho, who was on the line, it would have gone in, would have been 1-0 up within the first sort of few minutes. So once again showing that Tomkins not only has a threat offensively or defensively in terms of just being solid, but also he's got that threat going forward in terms of from set pieces he can be a threat there. So although it got cleared off the line, it was a very good header, but realistically, because the goalkeeper had such a bad day, that was just a prime example of that, in the fact that he just basically punched it into the head of Tomkins. But James Tomkins here, another clean sheet for him, another solid performance alongside Mamadou Sakho, and I do think a well-deserved 7. Now let's move on to the left back, Patrick Van Aanholt, who I'm going to give an 8. As always, got forward into some attacking positions and had a key role to play in Palace's second goal, getting down the left and finding Zaha, who in turn found James McArthur to finish. Also showed some nice touches to put others in for chances and took his own goal well. So Patrick Van Aanholt here, I've given him an 8, and much like his performances have been sort of the second half of the season in terms of him being one of our more consistent players and certainly being quite important to the way we've been playing, this was another performance where actually he was one of our key players, once again not only defensively but going forward as well. Now of course defensively I think that Mamadou Sakho and James Tomkins done most of the work, but I do think Van Aanholt did chip in quite a lot there in terms of helping that defensive unit, but I do think that the majority of his contribution did come from the offensive role, and that's because, like he always does, he got forward into these attacking positions down that left hand side as much as possible. And in terms of the goals we conceded, you know, the first 2 goals, if they were scored by Barcelona, everyone will be raving about it purely because of all the one-touch passes down that left-hand side, all of these no-look passes. I think there was even a nutmeg in there as well. So in terms of the goals the goals we scored and Leicester conceded, I do think that actually Patrick Van Aanholt played quite a key role for that. Not only because it came down his side, but mainly because he was actually involved in it as well, in terms of that one-touch football. So especially the second goal, obviously that was the one that James McArthur scored, and obviously that was just before the end of the first half. Obviously getting the ball down that left-hand side, lovely ping-pong passing. Van Aanholt on the overlap, got loads of space on the edge of the box, whipped a lovely cross into Zaha, who's controlled it, launched it to McArthur. It did originally look like it was going to Joe Ward, but McArthur took the ball, controlled it, span around and scored there. So not only was, you know, the fact that he was able to get the ball to Zaha, who obviously gave it to McArthur to score, but also, you know, some of the other goals as well, he was involved as well. And of course, because he was obviously showing nice touches and getting forward, he was being quite a big influence offensively for us. And, you know, if you look at the stats, I think he was the joint first fastest player of this game week. So this weekend he was one of the fastest players, which just shows actually when he does get the chances to go forward, he can really use his pace, and especially for that second goal, in terms of him going on the overlap, using his pace to get in behind and put the cross into Zaha. That is actually quite a key thing for us in terms of the way we set up, because if we can utilise his pace and his attacking ability, then of course, like we saw here, there's going to be chances for players in the box to get in the end of them, and obviously for us, we did score from them. But of course, he had loads of nice touches, done an alright defensive job, so overall his performance was good. But just to top it off, he scored the goal. You know, I think it was 2 goals in 3 minutes, I think, towards the end of the game. Obviously, Jeffrey Slupp with a through ball from Zaha, I believe. Jeffrey Slupp's gone through on goal, literally seconds after coming off. Hit the ball at the goalkeeper, I believe it's Hammer, made a great save there. But of course, the ball's just come to Van Aanholt, and he's just calmly curled it into the bottom corner, right in front of the Holmesdale, far right corner. Fantastic finish in terms of a first touch, but also the fact that he got the curl and he managed to get it in the corner, that was also quite impressive as well. So, to be honest, the fact that he was good offensively, done a decent job defensively, and the fact that he was not only scored his own goal but was involved in some of the other goals we conceded, I do think we can fairly say that he does deserve an 8. Now obviously I've talked about this quite a lot over the last few months in terms of the first half season, where Van Aanholt was probably one of our worst players, especially after the Bristol City result, and many people, not myself, I'm not really included, but quite a lot of people are calling for him to be sold in January. I personally said we've seen how good of a player he is last season, give him a chance. We've given him his chance. He's now got a lovely run in a team in terms of no competition for places, and he's excelled. And he's alongside someone like James Tomkins, Luka Milivojevic. He's been one of our most important, consistent players, and certainly you've got to give credit to him, because realistically, he had a real. I don't even think there's a word to describe how terrible he was at the beginning of the season. But the fact that he's able to pick himself up and has carried on with performances like this is fantastic. So it's a complete juxtaposition, his performance at the moment to his performance at the beginning of the season, which is, you know, of course, fantastic. Now, in terms of when we signed him, this performance really just epitomises what player I thought we were going to sign last season. Now, of course, we did see in bits last season the talent he's got, but this game just really summed up what we thought we were getting. We thought we were getting a fairly solid defensive player who can go forward, not only cross but also score goals, and certainly that's what we saw in this game. So we finally got glimpses. Obviously in the last month we have, but this game in particular we got a really good glimpse in terms of the player we thought we signed. He performed like that, and certainly if he can continue to perform like that, he's of a good age. He's got a few years left in his contract, and of course he's loving his time at Palace. Hopefully long may it continue, because he's certainly one of these players that if he can get his mindset to it, and if the manager can put the right system for him, he can be really effective, and that's what we saw here again. But to be honest, I think, you know, there's not really much more to say about his performance other than the fact that he was solid defensively, getting that clean sheet, very effective going forward, and of course he got the reward for that in terms of the goal he did get. So Patrick Van Aanholt here at left back, 8 for him. Now to move on to the captain and midfielder Luka Milivojevic, who I'm going to give a 7. A steady display from the captain, who did nothing outstanding on this occasion, but did the basics well enough to keep the midfield ticking. So Luka Milivojevic here, I've given him a 7, and much like the performance of, you know, someone like James Tomkins, for example, where he done a pretty decent performance, he kept the clean sheet. Other than that, there was nothing outstanding, and, you know, there were a few players like that who were just done their job that which we would have wanted them to do, and I do think that Luka, the captain, was one of these players. Now, of course, he's much like someone like Patrick Van Aanholt. He's been one of our most consistent players this season, and certainly the fact that he hasn't dropped his performance levels is fantastic to see. And, you know, last week he wasn't fantastic. The week before that he was alright. So the fact that he's able to, the week before that he was against Brighton, he was fantastic, but the week before the Brighton game as well, he weren't fantastic. He weren't necessarily as effective as he could have been, but the fact that he's still able to do a job for the team and still lead the team as the captain is of course great to see. And, you know, we know how good he is in terms of all of these outstanding tackles and challenges. And of course we saw that in this game, but there was nothing to stand out for me. There was no sort of one in particular tackle, one in particular block, which really for me did stand out. So realistically, I can't really give him an 8, purely based on the fact that even though it was a steady performance, he didn't do anything outstanding in the game. But the thing I really like about his performance is if he's not going to have a fantastic game where he absolutely bosses the midfield, maybe gets a goal or maybe gets an assist like he did against Brighton. If he's not doing that, he's one of these players who still does the basics right, keeps that midfield ticking, and his role is really important in terms of giving that protection to the back four. Obviously we kept a clean sheet, and you've got to give credit to the back four, but also you've got to give credit to actually the man in front of him, because obviously Luca protecting the back four, he does a really important role in terms of just being that sort of protection in front of them. So if he does his job well, then the back line have to do less work, and of course if you get all of that right, you're of course going to have a good performance. And personally for me, I do think the clean sheet was really deserved, not only because of the defensive performance, but I do think Luca in front of them also had a role to play in that. But in terms of just his overall play this season, I think we could just say how much of a class captain he seems like, and I certainly would want him to definitely be the official club captain next season, and maybe Mamadou Sakho as the vice captain. But I do think he is a class captain. I think he's just an absolute class footballer, because much like Wilfried Zaha, he's so good that even when he has an off game, you don't really notice it, because obviously he just goes on and does the basics right and gives his all for the team. But also he's just a class human being. He's absolutely fantastic on and off the field, and of course we're really we're really lucky to have a player of his calibre and obviously of his character as well, because he is quite a big asset to the side. So Luka Milivojevic here playing in a defensive midfield role, although he done a good job and certainly did play his part in terms of keeping a clean sheet, I do think there was nothing really outstanding in this game. But the thing that I was really impressive is the fact that he'd done the basics right and he's kept it ticking in midfield. So the captain here, a 7 for him. Now to move on to Yohan Cabaye, who I am going to give a 7. Was involved in some neat intricate play for Palace in the midfield and helped the Eagles get in the front foot in the first half. Faded a little in the second half and was booked. So Yohan Cabaye here, I've given him a 7, and much like what I compared it to Barcelona, because I'm sure that if someone like Barcelona or Man City were passing the ball in that first half as well as we did, and if they had scored the goals where we passed the ball as well as we did, and if they had scored them goals, everyone would be talking about it, which really just shows the high quality of not only our goals we scored, but also just the general midfield play in the game was also really impressive. And I do think that Cabaye, he's one of these players who, yes, he may be getting on a bit and his legs might be going, some would argue. I still think the fact that he can put in such high quality performances like this is obviously quite impressive. And I do think, alongside Loftus-Cheek, McArthur and Milivojevic, I do think that's really, really solid midfield 4, which of course can change into a midfield 3, or however you want to see it. I do think that in the midfield, them 4 or them 3 plus Cabaye is quite a really solid base to the team. And of course Milivojevic's job to protect the back 4, but also someone like Cabaye and Loftus-Cheek, McArthur, these guys need to control the midfield, and certainly they did do that in this game here. Now of course, in terms of getting on the front foot, so in terms of controlling and command in the first half, obviously we dominated completely because we were 2-0 up at half time. But I do think Cabaye, playing in that midfield, the centre of the pitch, I think that he was quite important and quite integral in terms of actually getting us in the front foot and helping us to have that control of the game. And of course, once we got the first goal, we had to make sure we could keep hold on to that control and obviously keep the lead. And I do think Cabaye was one of these players who not only helped us to get into the game, but also helped to sort of steady the ship and make sure that Leicester couldn't get back into the game, and he's certainly done a great job with that. Now of course, much like what I've said, sort of the theme of his performances this season, he gets a bit tired, a bit fatigued towards the end of the game, and he did sort of fade a little bit in the second half, and obviously he got a little bit of a silly booking. But overall, if you look at his overall performance, I do think a 7 is a sort of fair reflection of his game. And although he was involved in the intricate build-up play, if he probably had got an assist or would have chipped in with a fantastic long ball, much like Saka's one, if he had done that, he probably would have sort of breached into that 8 role, because I do think his performance was that good. But the fact that he hasn't got like an actual assist to prove for it, and the fact that obviously he sort of faded a little bit in the second half, I do think that sort of warrants a 7, because certainly if he kept the performance levels and the energy levels up for the whole game, he probably would have got an 8. And if he had got an assist or maybe a long ball through which resulted in the goal, if he had something like that, he probably would have got an 8. But I do think a 7 is a fair reflection of his game. And do comment below what you think. But my personal opinion is sort of his overall view. I do think this is one of his best performances I've seen from him, not just in general, or not. I'm not going to say in general, but one of his best performances I've seen from him in quite a long time. So hopefully the Yohan Cabaye of old starting to creep back into his game. So hopefully in the next 2 games, which is really important, and hopefully if he stays on next season, of course we can carry on with performances like this. But Johan Cabaye, a 7 for him. Now to move on to Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who I'm going to give an 8. Made several driving runs from midfield and was a threat for the Leicester defence. Much improved in last weekend's showing against Watford and capped it off with the 3rd goal. So Ruben Loftus-Cheek here, I've given him an 8, and what more is there to say about this guy? You know, in terms of his performance last week against Watford was terrible, but here was the complete opposite, the complete juxtaposition in terms of he was most people's man of the match, and I'll go on to talk about that later, but he certainly was up there with one of the best players I've seen on the ball, and to be I saw in the game, and certainly one of the reasons for that was because of how good he was on the ball. But of course, you know, I think one game in particular which stands out for me was Stoke at the beginning of the season. When we played them, that was a game that Loftus-Cheek completely bossed, and that was when he was at his best before he got injured. And this game sort of reminded me of that, because he didn't really play good last weekend, but came into this game and was absolutely flawless. He was arguably one of the best players on the pitch, and certainly his offensive performance was very important too in terms of getting the win. Now, in terms of his overall performance, the main reason I've given him an 8 is, yes, he scored the goal, which was fantastic in terms of the pass from Sakho was probably better than the goal, but the goal was still up there in terms of quality, in terms of the fact that he was able to take it around the goalkeeper, sit the goalkeeper down on the floor, and then just round him and score. So obviously the technique to do that was great, but that was just really a reward for how good his performance was, because even if he hadn't scored the goal, I still probably would have given him an 8 because of how good his performance was. But I do think the goal really just topped it up for him, made it 3-0, and ultimately killed the game dead there, as we went on to score. I keep saying concede, but I went on to score the other 2 goals. But to be honest, the main thing really that impressed me, and even if he didn't score the goals, if he didn't get the goal, you know, had an involvement in the goals we did score, I still would have given him an 8 because his driving runs from midfield, so in terms of picking up the ball, running with it, he nutmegged Mahrez, all these things like that, and the fact that he was just a threat to the Leicester backline, the Leicester defence, just for that alone, I think his performance was absolutely fantastic. And, you know, it was just sort of the cherry on the top of the cake, the fact that he was able just to get that goal with a fantastic finish, obviously fantastic through ball, but good finish to get around the goalkeeper and score. And of course, his passion as well in his celebration was of course great to see. Now, this is one player that obviously is going to go back to Chelsea when the loan ends at the end of the season. For me personally, if there's a lot of money available in the transfer kitty, and of course if he goes to the World Cup, this may change in terms of the cost, but I do think that Chelsea, you know, they're going to probably look to get rid of him purely based on the fact that I personally don't think he'll get into that Chelsea side, purely because, you know, you've got likes of Hazard who can play in that role. So realistically, he's going to go back to Chelsea, not really going to get that many chances. So we 100% need to be trying to sign him next season. And I think that the priority, much like last season, should be not necessarily a big money signing, because I'd like to see us make numerous signings, but certainly I do think some emphasis has to be put on getting Ruben Loftus-Cheek, because the quality he's shown, not only with his goal scoring ability, but the ability to actually, you know, pick up the ball in midfield and drive forward and actually ping the ball out wide and carry the ball, that's what really impresses me. And I think we should really be throwing what we can, money permitting, at Chelsea to try and sign him on a permanent, because as we've seen in this game is, yes, he may not get that many goals, but when he does score goals, they're quality, and when he's not scoring goals, he's putting in high quality performances, and that's what we saw here. But to be honest, if you had to compare it to a performance, you know, I briefly talked about the Stoke game, but Brighton game, you know, against Watford last week he wasn't good, but the game before that against Brighton he was absolutely unplayable, one of our most key players in that game. And that's the thing, if we have a player like this who can have 2 fantastic games in 3 games, then that's great. And the fact that he's able to, like I've said, control the midfield as well as he does and drive the ball forward, that's what I really want to see from a midfielder. And although he's a slightly different player to McArthur, I do think that actually the fact that McArthur can carry the ball and Loftus-Cheek can carry the ball as well, that obviously is fantastic, or a fantastic asset to have in the midfield, because obviously it allows us to, when we have this neat intricate play, players can pass it from one another, carry it forward, and of course get other players involved. So it's not only the fact that his personal talent or his individual talent is great to see, but the fact that other players around him have also fit to that sort of talent, and obviously it works in our system, is of course great to see as well. But Loftus-Cheek here, I've given him an 8. There isn't really much more to add here other than the fact that he was fantastic in the midfield, you know, at carrying the ball, getting forward, and the fact that he was just a constant threat for Leicester was fantastic to see as well. But obviously the main thing for me is the goal as well, you know, although I do think I probably would have given him an 8 regardless of whether he scored or not. I do think that sort of topped up his performance, and like I've said, flawless is probably the best word to describe his performance here. So do comment below with your thoughts and whether you do think he should go to the World Cup and whether you do think we're signing on a permanent. But personally for me, another great performance and an 8 for him. Now to move on to James McArthur, who I'm going to give a 9. A display full of energy, desire and quality. He got the assist for the first goal with a superb back heel into the path of Zaha, and then finished neatly on the turn to fire Palace into a 2-goal lead. He continued to be busy in the midfield thereafter, and thoroughly deserved to be on the winning side. So James McArthur here, I've given him a 9, and you know, much like the performance of Sakho-Tomkins in terms of he's very consistent, and all of the time he puts in 100% effort. This is basically the same with McArthur, and every week I talk about his energy, desire and quality. But once again here against Leicester we saw it, but it was even better than it has been in past weeks, and that's the reason I've given him a 9, because you would say that although he only scored 1 goal and he got 1 assist, he was probably one of our most important players, purely based on the fact that he, much like Loftus-Cheek, the fact that he controlled that midfield and drived forward. That for me personally is one of the main reasons we won the game, because if it wasn't for our midfield being as dominant as they were, and McArthur in particular, we probably would have, maybe Leicester would have got back into the game, but because we had that control, especially coming from McArthur's ability to hold on the ball but also have energy to close Leicester players down, because of that it was really important to our win. But not only that, it's just the magnitude of the win as well, because Leicester easily could have got back into the game, but the fact that we played really solid in the midfield, which of course the defence is important, but if you've got a solid midfield, that's even better. And because of that, obviously we went on to win by a quite considerable margin. But in terms of obviously his contribution in the game, yes, I already talked about his energy to close down players, his desire to get on the ball, and obviously his quality with his passing. Yes, that's all great, but the main thing in this game, you know, he's obviously got another assist. You know, obviously he's not known for having tricks, but the fact that he was able to backheel it to Zaha, who's the player normally doing the tricks, which was, this is great to see as well. And once again, that sort of intricate build-up play down the left-hand side was fantastic to see. And the fact that the ball came to McArthur, he was not only in the right position, but also put the right pass to Zaha. That was great to see. And obviously Zaha, he finished fantastically, you know, with the, you know, sort of toe punted it into goal, which was fantastic. But the fact that McArthur was able to be involved in that intricate play, move away from it, get into an area where he could get onto the ball, then get onto the ball and pass it for an assist, which of course that was great to see. But also Wilfried Zaha returned the favour, so Zaha got into the box, got on the end of a cross from Patrick Van Aanholt, and of course Zaha set him up. McArthur, he probably could have hit it first time, but it probably would have missed. But what he done, quite composed, stopped the ball dead, you know, done a 360 turn and shot into the far corner of the goal. And because the box was so crowded, purely because there were so many Leicester players there, because there were so many Palace players there, because of that, goalkeeper couldn't save it, and of course it was a great finish into the far corner. And you know, that gave us a 2-goal lead, made us pretty comfortable at half time, and arguably you could say that because of how coolly he took that goal, it meant that we got that 2-goal lead. And realistically, if it was 1-0 at half time, maybe Leicester could come out rejuvenated and probably maybe even win the game, maybe, because you know the quality they've got. But the fact that he was able to not necessarily kill the game there, but almost kill the game there, and made sure we had that lead at half time, that was of course really important, because people always say game of 2 halves. It could have easily been that if Leicester had come out for the second half in the right manner, but obviously because they had a few injuries, they had a sending off, it didn't quite happen like that. But I do still think that McArthur's goal and obviously his assist as well in the first half were really important and really key moments within the game. Now of course, obviously in the first half he was heavily involved in terms of getting the assist and the goal, but even after that, even though he didn't get another goal or he didn't get an assist, I still thought he continued to be very busy in the midfield. And to be honest, if you didn't know which side he was on, and regardless of the goals he scored, if you looked at his performance, he would definitely be on the winning side, regardless of, you know, what team we know he plays for. If you're just looking at a neutral, looking at his game and had to place a player onto the team, you would say based on how well McArthur performed, he would definitely just 100% be on the winning side, purely based on how good his performance was. And you know, I've only said that for a few players this season, but it just goes to show how good McArthur's performance was here against Leicester. But I don't really think there's much more to add, because he was just absolutely fantastic in this game. You know, I think he's probably one of our, I think he might be He's not necessarily our top goal scorer, but I do still think he's up there. So obviously this is another goal for him to chip in there, and I think last season he had a fair amount of goals. So obviously he's been putting in good performances this season, but he's finally getting into areas now where he can not only assist his opposition players, or his team players, but also he's getting into positions where he can score himself. And you know, when you consider he's got a cool head and he's pretty decent at finishing, surely that's going to be quite a crucial thing for us going forth this season. Now, I talked briefly, you know, with Johan Cabaye about the contract situation. It looks like James McArthur, it's not that he has signed a new deal, it's the fact that he already had a deal anyway, which the club didn't announce, and that's likely to go on for another 2 seasons. So if that's true, that's great news, because the fact that he's staying here for another 2 seasons, obviously I have to stress, if that rumour is true, then of course that would be great for us, because I do think he's a great asset for us, not only obviously with his midfield performances, and his energy, desire and quality, you know, what I always talk about, but just the fact that he can chip up with goals and assists, which are also very important goals and assists. That's of course a really major thing for me and the team. So James McArthur here, another performance full of energy, desire and quality. Got the assist for the first goal, and got a goal you know, for the second goal we conceded, and basically gave us that 2-goal lead, which basically sort of won the game for us. But overall, another quality performance from McArthur in midfield, and once again one of our most key players. So McArthur here, a 9 for him. Now to move on to the forward Andros Townsend, who I am going to give a 7. Was perhaps overshadowed by the performances of others around him, but quietly went about his business as Palace impressed again as an attacking force. So Andros Townsend here, I've given him a 7, and he's probably one of these players who probably will go unnoticed for this game, purely based on the fact that he didn't get a goal or he didn't get an assist in this game. But I still do think that although other players around him played fantastically, I do think that although his performance will go unnoticed, we've got to give him a bit of credit, purely based on the fact that he was still pretty good as an attacking force, and actually as a whole in terms of our front two with Zaha and Townsend, and of course people like Loftus-Cheek and McArthur, I do still think that he obviously helped us as an attacking force. Now, I talked about it briefly last week in terms of the fact that he's playing out of position. It's not really his best position, so we can't really expect him to play that well here. But once again, he's shown in this game here that although he's not fantastic playing as a striker, he can still do his job up there, still create spaces in behind. And of course, when you consider, you know, the intricate build-up play to Zaha's goal, he was obviously quite involved in that. And the fact that he's able to get involved, create that space, and of course, even though he doesn't get an assist or a goal in that situation, the fact that he's involved is of course great to see. And you know, we saw that constantly throughout this game, and although, like I've said, he hasn't got anything to count for it, but although it will go unnoticed, I do think he was really important in this game. And I suppose you could say he's someone like Milivojevic, who, although he wasn't outstanding, he quietly went about his job, done the basics right, and like we always expect from Andros Townsend, he uses his pace effectively, and of course is a great attacking threat for us, not only with his goal scoring chances, but also he can obviously put a ball into the area, which, although we haven't got a big striker up there, he was still quite involved in that. Now, obviously we know how underrated he is, because although he's, you know, hasn't got that many goals or assists this season, I still do think he's sort of going under the radar, not necessarily to win player of the season, but to be on the shortlist when you consider how, you know, how effective he's been this season. You know, although he hasn't got the goals or assists as an attacking force, he's been fairly consistent. And, you know, much like what his dad said on Twitter, you know, people won't notice his performances because he doesn't do anything outstanding. But the fact that he's got this just absolute tank and absolute engine just to keep going, do his all for the team, and when he has the opportunities to create chances, that's what you want to see from a player. And to be honest, he's absolutely brilliant, because, you know, he's going under the radar, he's underrated, undervalued by some fans. But when you consider how good his performances are, irrespective of if he's got something to count for it, that is the main thing really that stands out for me. So Andros Townsend here, a 7 for him. Not really too much to say about his performance, because there weren't necessarily any standout moments for me, but the fact that he was, you know, the main reason there's not really people are not going to notice him, is just because players around him played even better. But I still do think he was quite impressive in that attacking force, and certainly if he can stay at Palace for, you know, next few seasons alongside Wilfried Zaha, that pace, we get a new striker in, that certainly can be a really forceful attacking force up front. So hopefully, you know, he can start, you know, turning these fantastic performances, get some end product off the end of them, and of course he'll improve even more. But Andros Townsend here, a 7 for him. Now to move on to our final player, Wilfried Zaha, who I'm going to give an 8. Finished with composure when found space inside the box, and was heavily involved in everything that was good about Palace's attacking play. also provided the assist for McArthur, and it was his pace and determination that led to Marc Albrighton being sent off. So Wilfried Zaha here, I've given him an 8, and much like he's been this season, he's quite, you can't really question it, but he's one of our most important players. And personally for me, I wouldn't vote for him for player of the season, purely based on the fact that he's played less games than Luka. But if Luka played the same amount of games as Wilfried Zaha, he would certainly absolutely clear the floor with everyone for the player of the season, purely based on how good he has been. But before I go on to talk about his performance here, obviously he got a goal in this game, and that is the 4th game in a row that it's 4 goals for him in 4 games, which is a really impressive stat. And if you look at it in even more detail, it's involved in 6 goals, so 4 goals and 2 assists in the last 4 games. It really just really sums up how good he's been this season, because when you consider his first 4 goals had come in the first half of the season, and he scored 4 in the last 4 games. It really just shows up how in form he is at the minute, but also, like we always knew, how much of an attacking threat he is. Now, to all these people who said he's got no end product, he's just, he's all skills, he's showing now, these people, the doubters, how good he really is. And, it's great to see for us Palace fans how good he has been. And the fact that he's come out in the last few weeks and said he's happy at Palace, things like that is really enjoyable to hear, because if we can keep hold of him for the next few seasons, he'd be really important for us. And certainly if he can carry on with performances like this, where he not only gets goals but also gets assists, then of course, there's no doubt why we want to keep him at Palace. But obviously with performances like this, he's going to attract attention. But once again, as a Palace fan, we've got to make the most of it, because at the moment he's performing really well. Now, in terms of his finish as well, obviously you've got to give credit to him for the finish. Obviously, great finish into the goal, but you've got to give credit to the whole team in terms of the build-up. So down at left hand side, 1-2 passing, got the ball to McArthur passes to Wilf. Obviously it was intended for Joe Ward, but that aside, it wasn't intended for Joe Ward, that was Zaha's assist. But McArthur got the ball to Zaha. Yes, that's a great finish, but you've got to give credit to the rest of the team in terms of that build-up playing and getting involved. And of course, it's great to see that once we've pulled off some magic in terms of getting the ball up the field, the fact that we can end it off with a goal is of course great to see, because it's all great passing the ball really well and nothing comes from it. So when you pass the ball well and then get a goal off the back of it, that's of course great to see as well. And if you look at the game as a whole, he was probably our most involved player, or he was heavily involved in everything that was good about our attacking play. So whenever we were going forward, or whenever we were using pace down the wings, it was always Wilfried Zaha who was involved, and he was everything that was good about Palace's attacking play. Because if you look at Leicester's attacking play, that was pretty dreadful in terms of the amount of chances or the lack of chances they had. Whereas on the other hand, Palace, whenever we had chances, Wilfried Zaha took them, and that's what was good. The fact that everything was centred around him, but he was the good thing in our attacking play. Now, of course, much like what I mentioned there, McArthur, obviously he got, he assisted McArthur inside the box. Yes, that pass from Wilf did look like it was going to go to Joe Ward, but put that aside, I still do think it was a great assist in terms of getting on the end of that cross from Patrick Van Aanholt, controlling it, and then just spreading it out to McArthur. And like I've already mentioned, great finish from McArthur in terms of spinning past it and scoring from there. So not only is Zaha getting the goals, which show that he has got end product and obviously are important for us, but also he's getting assists for other players, which realistically against Watford he should have had 2 assists, but because he didn't get them 2, he's been stuck on 2 assists the whole season. So now he's starting to actually get assists again. It's going to put him up them charts, and once again, with him scoring goals, with him getting assists, it's only going to put his stock even higher. And once again, like I've said, he is a high contender for the player of the season shortlist. But once again, we know his pace and his sort of determination and his determined runs are fantastic. And we saw that exactly here against Leicester, because that's what we feared coming into the game. The fact that Vardy and Mahrez were going to run at our fullbacks. But basically, that didn't happen because they were really lacklustre. And we basically done the same to Leicester. So whatever Leicester would normally do to teams, we done that to them. And Zaha was one of these key players in terms of just running at the fullbacks with that sheer pace. And when he was drifting inside, which you could argue was his main position, he still was able to do that. And it was his sort of pace and determination which led to Marc Albrighton getting sent off. No doubt about it. It's a straight red card. He's the last man standing, and Albrighton's got absolutely ripped to shreds by Zaha. Zaha's going to go through on goal, but instead Marc Albrighton decides to grab him. Not only sort of rugby tackle him, but it was a really bad rugby tackle. And having played rugby, I can definitely say that if I had made a tackle like that, I'll be quite disappointed, because not only was he just trying to grab him, but he wasn't necessarily getting a hold on him, but he just kept tugging at his shirt and then eventually dragged him down, which of course is a straight red card. Last man, as well as grabbing him, that's fine. And obviously, as I'm recording this podcast on a Tuesday, it's been announced that he's going to be suspended, not only for the red card, but also he's going to get an extended thing for his, for his arguments with the referee, basically, because he thought it wasn't a red card, where realistically, I don't see how anyone other than a Leicester fan can say it's not a red card when he's the last man standing, and obviously he's taken a player down, and obviously retrospective action, obviously he's going to get the ban for the red card, but also I think it'd be extended purely based on the fact that obviously he argued with the referee basically for, a few minutes. But overall, I don't think there's any really discussion about that, and I do think it's great that Zaha, people would, if Zaha had dived there, people would say, oh, that's a dive, and people I've seen say that, but when you look at it, Marc Albrighton, he's basically just got his arms around him, pulled him down, so I don't see how, the stupid people saying it's a dive, he went down too easily. I don't see why anyone would say that when he quite clearly got pulled down. And obviously that was the game-changing moment, that as soon as Leicester lost their man, obviously the game went in our favour, and obviously we capitalised on that one-man advantage in terms of going forth and adding the 3 other goals. But Wilfried Zaha, once again, he wasn't only involved in our attacking play in terms of getting goals and assists, but also he was really integral in terms of causing that attack, which obviously led to Marc Albrighton going off. But overall, a very good game from him, an 8 for him, I do think is a fair result. He took his finish well, he got a lovely assist, which, yes, it wasn't attended from McArthur, but a great assist there. And obviously, it was great to see that even if Marc Albrighton hadn't have grabbed him, he probably still would have scored from that chance anyway. So, of course, that sort of attacking piece of play was, of course, great to see as well. So, Wilfried Zaha here, an 8 for him. So I'm just going to now move on to the subs, and like I do every week, I'll just go through them in a little bit of detail, because I don't think there's really too much to say about 2 of them, so I'll just go through them here. But they were Jeffrey Slupp, Christian Benteke and Chung Lee. So Jeffrey Slupp here, I'll probably give him a 6. He came on from McArthur on the 82nd minute. Obviously he's been injured for quite a while now, he's come back into the side. He didn't do anything fantastic, but obviously he was involved in our 4th goal in terms of getting on the end of a through ball by Zaha, had a shot the goalkeeper saved, and of course PVA was there to take it, get the rebound and curl it into the bottom corner. So although he wasn't necessarily involved in terms of directly involved in the goal, in terms of it was his pass or whatever caused the goal, but it was his shot that deflected off the goalkeeper which caused the goal, and I do think he gets the assist for that. So of course, coming off the pitch, getting an assist when you've just come back from injury, you can't really argue and say that's bad. Obviously Christian Benteke, this is the main one. Obviously I'm going to give him a 6, but he came off for Townsend on the 85th minute, and because there was, the crowd was roaring, and obviously with all the drama on the pitch, no one really noticed that these subs came on. But Christian Benteke, he was given a little bit of a run out, 85 minutes, so a few minutes to make an impact. And of course, it was only his 3rd goal of the season he scored, but the fact that he scored the goal, which, he was given the penalty by the whole team agreed, and the bench to give him the penalty, the fact that he stepped up, blasted it down the middle, and obviously his celebrations as well, that was of course great to see. And he won the penalty himself by running into the area, got tripped up by Harry Maguire. And yes, he's going through a tough season, and it's not necessarily because he's bad. He's been playing with an injury, he's low on confidence, but I do think it was a really nice thing for the whole team, especially Luka, who could have added another goal and caught up with the Serbian Premier League top scorer charts. He could have gone up and tried to match that in terms of most goals by a Serbian in the Premier League in a season. But instead, Luka, being the captain that he is, I think he's it's a fantastic thing that he's given up his penalty for obviously a teammate who's struggling for confidence at the minute, but also the fact that the bench and the players all around him agreed, and the fact that he scored it and the whole ground was obviously supporting him as well and singing his name, that was of course great to see as well. And I'm sure that will help him, give him a little bit more confidence. But of course there's only 2 games left, but I'm sure that this will give him a little bit of confidence for the last few games, and you never know, he may score his 4th or maybe his 5th goal of the season. So once again, came on the pitch for about 5-6 minutes, although he didn't necessarily have any impact in terms of anything fantastic he did. The fact that he was able to win a penalty, then score it, and obviously put behind him all of these sort of worries about not scoring, that was of course great to see. And another sub, the final sub, Chung Lee, like Benteke, he came on right near the end for Loftus-Cheek. Not really any time to make an impact. Probably give him a 5. Not because he was bad or not because I don't rate him, purely based on the fact that he didn't really do much in the game. But what you've got to say is he's one of these players who hasn't really been fantastic this season. You know, ever since that game against Burnley where he basically assisted, I think it was it Chris Wood who scored the goal there. Since that game, I didn't want him anywhere near the side. But the fact that he's doing well in training, as Roy says, and the fact that he can come on here, not do anything terrible, but just help us see the game out, that is, of course, what you want to see from your, from your subs. So Jeffrey Slarp, Christian Benteke, Chung Lee here. Not the worst subs, but certainly didn't necessarily have the most impact on the game. But like I've said, Jeffrey Slarp getting the assist for Van Aanholt's goal. Obviously, Christian Benteke scoring a goal. And obviously, Lee just coming on just to sort of secure the win, if we want to say it. Yeah, if you want to say it like that. But to be honest, just to sort of summarise the game there, they were the subs, and obviously I've finished talking about the playing squad. But I do think at the moment we're seeing such good football. You know, teams in the bottom half of the Premier League normally just sort of like to play quite organised at the back and just sort of like to sort of ground results out. But at the moment we're seeing great football under Roy Hodgson, obviously a man of a lot of experience. But that's obviously credit to not only Roy Hodgson but the playing staff. The playing staff, obviously the players, and of course the training staff as well, because obviously they're doing their bit on the training ground to make us play like this. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that we're playing like Barcelona, because as you see, if someone like Barcelona or Man City scores the goal or scored the goals that we did in this game, everyone will be raving about it purely because of that 1-2 pass and that lovely passing football. So at the moment we're seeing great football, and long may it continue. Now, of course, we're not mathematically safe yet, so I can talk all positive, but until it's mathematically safe, I'm not going to do so. But we are quite close now, 1 point maybe, which, when you consider our next 2 games are Stoke City and West Brom, realistically, we've got a chance, having drawn with West Brom early on in the season and beaten Stoke. Realistically, we can get probably 4 to 6 points from that, so that would obviously see us safe. But although we're not mathematically safe yet, we're very close. But obviously we mustn't get complacent. If you remember Oldham, I personally don't remember it, but I keep hearing people say it, so I'm going to mention it here. We don't want another scenario like that. So once we're mathematically safe, we can all celebrate. But at the moment, it's looking really positive. The way we're playing is really good, and hopefully the way we're playing, that should be the thing that obviously pushes us through to hopefully remain safe. And to be honest, it does feel like that the potential of the club will be decided in the summer, because when you think about it, we're playing really good football at the minute. We've got a really good squad. We're finally starting to see the end of that injury crisis, and we're getting key players back. So realistically, if we keep Roy Hodgson in the summer, he can, providing we stay up, which is looking likely, we can hopefully rebuild for the next season. If we back him in the transfer market, keep Zaha, then there's good times coming for us, because if we can perform like this with all of our players back fit, with Roy Hodgson as the manager, and obviously with him having a few additions in the summer, then obviously it's looking good for us. But to be honest, although I'm talking quite positive here and I've talked quite a lot about it, it's a 5-0 win, really exciting, really great team performances. We've got to all prepare for that big game next weekend against Stoke, and obviously the one after that with West Brom, because these are 2 big games that realistically, if we beat Stoke, they might probably be down, because obviously they're in 19th, and obviously if we beat West Brom, people say they're already down. Yes, they're having a little bit of a resurgence, but let's say they're down. Obviously that would be a big game for us. So next 2 games are really big for us, and like I've said, realistically we need to get at least 4 points from them, if not 6. So I'm now going to move on to my Man of the Match award. But before I do that, I give you my Man of the Match, I thought had the biggest influence in the game, and now I'm going to give you the 4 nominations I put forward for the award. Now obviously after such a good performance where we were really dominant in the fact that we won 5-0, it's actually pretty hard to pick out 4 players, but in particular 1 player who's going to win it overall in terms of who the Man of the Match was, because I think as a team performance, I think it was just the most complete performance I've seen from Palace, certainly this season and in recent history. And just overall, I just think that every player gave their all in the game, and basically we just took advantage of the fact that Leicester were quite lacklustre, and they were lacklustre at the start, and we just made sure that we punished them for that, and they basically lost confidence, and obviously we went on to score the 3 goals to get it to 5-0. But for me personally, I do think we could nominate the whole team, and I could go through why I've put each player on there. But personally for me, I've narrowed it down to 4 players, and yes, a few players do miss out, but I do think that these 4 players do have a fair reflection in terms of how the game went. So these 4 players are Patrick Van Aanholt, James McArthur, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Wilfried Zaha. So in terms of Van Aanholt, like he always does, because Leicester weren't really going forward that much, Van Aanholt, like he does, he likes to get forward as much as possible. He'd done that in this game, and in terms of loads of our attacking movements, he was quite crucial to that. And in terms of the goal, or the first goal we scored, he was certainly involved in that, in terms of sort of the one-touch football and passing going down on that left-hand side. And of course the second goal as well, he was involved with that as well. So once again, showing that when he goes forward, he can be quite useful in terms of one-touch football. And of course he got his own goal. Obviously Jeffrey Stark got through on goal from a pass from Wilfried Zaha. Obviously Slop, against his former side, tried to have a shot. The keeper's made a good save, but Van Aanholt comes to him first time, doesn't even have to think about it. First time, curls it lovely into the bottom corner. Great finish to make it 3-0. Obviously an important goal in terms of the confidence. You know, if we keep scoring goals, it's going to bring the whole confidence of the team up, because we've obviously won by such a big margin. And obviously that was quite an important thing. And of course Leicester towards the end of the game were getting back into it, but I just think that was sort of one of the nails in the coffin, as you say, in the fact that he was able to get that goal for them. But like I've said, good attacking threat, and the fact that he took his own goal well was great to see. And defensively as well, I do think he sorted out his positional play, and he was fairly good in that role as well. Now James McArthur, like he always does, he's always full of energy, but this performance in particular against Leicester here, he was full of energy once again. Desire, which was the main thing, you know, the desire to get something for the team. And obviously that resulted in him actually getting an assist and a goal as well. And obviously just quality as well. You know, we know how good McArthur is at passing the ball, and the fact that he backheeled it to Zaha, and the fact that he was involved in other goals down the left hand side, really just shows the quality he's got. But also that goes hand in hand with the energy, because if you've got the energy, even though you're not the quickest player, that's of course it's very important. But like I said, with the first goal, obviously there was lovely build-up play on the left-hand side, which included Patrick Van Aanholt. But James McArthur was the guy who got the ball inside the box. Lovely back heel to Zaha in space, and Zaha was absolutely, you know, clattered it into the goal. Fantastic goal there. Not only in terms of the finish, but in terms of the build-up play and just the team working together. It was, of course, great to see as well. And then obviously Wilfried Zaha returned the favour, got the ball from Van Aanholt. Wilfried Zaha crossed it into McArthur, and it did look like it was going to go to Joe Ward, but McArthur very coolly stopped the ball dead, span around it, put it into the far corner. So a great goal there to obviously give us a 2-goal lead. But once again, like he always does, a performance full of energy, desire and quality. And of course he got a goal and an assist, which he fully did deserve. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, you know, this guy was absolutely outstanding, and as you've probably heard in the player ratings, I did rate him quite highly. But in terms of his performance here, obviously he got the third goal for Palace, which was absolutely fantastic in terms of the ball from Sakho to get the ball to him. That was fantastic as well. But the fact that Loftus-Cheek stayed composed, stayed calmed, in the fact that he was able to, you know, stay quite light on his feet, get the goalkeeper down to the ground, then go the other way, which makes the goalkeeper fall down. And the fact that he's able just to, you know, curl the ball around the goalkeeper was absolutely fantastic and showed great composure. But the main thing I liked about his performance, because he got the goal, because that was deserved, that was like a reward for his performance. But his performance as a whole was absolutely fantastic in terms of the amount of runs he made from midfield going forward, and the fact that he was just a threat to the Leicester back line was the main thing really for me that stood out. And then of course Wilfried Zaha, you know, he scored the first goal for Palace. You know, he's on fire at the minute, 4 goals in 4 games, absolutely fantastic. But a great back heel from McArthur. Wilfried Zaha just toe pokes it into the goal, great finish there. And of course he got on the end of Van Aanholt's cross to once again set up McArthur for McArthur to score from Zaha's assist for that second goal, which was of course great to see. But much like what we always see from Zaha and Loftus-Cheek, they're always involved in Palace's good attacking play. And of course Wilfried Zaha playing in that unorthodox 4-4-2 or 4-2-2-4, sorry, 4-2-2-2 formation, whatever way you look at it. I do think Zaha, even though he's not a striker, he played really well up front. And like I said last week, because they're not orthodox, well, they're orthodox wingers, they're not unorthodox strikers. Because of that, it confused the Leicester backline, and it meant that Zaha had a field day up against them. But like I've said, his attacking play was great, and in terms of, you know, getting the player sent off, that was great as well. But in terms of scoring a goal and getting an assist was also quite impressive. Now in terms of these 4 players, you know, I do think that they stood out for me for different reasons. But if you go through the whole team, you know, you've got the likes of Mamadou Sakho. Even though he had a shaky start, he was fantastic in the game. You've got the likes of James Tomkins, who for probably the first time in about 5 weeks hasn't made it onto this shortlist. You know, you've got all of these other players like Andros Townsend, who didn't necessarily get a goal or get something for their performance, but they still put in good performances there. But these 4 players for me, in Van Aanholt, McArthur, Loftus-Cheek and Zaha, did personally for me shine a little bit more than the others. But in terms of my overall man of the match, do comment below if you do disagree. But I am going to give it to Ruben Loftus-Cheek because I think he was absolutely fantastic. So congratulations, Ruben. You don't get a trophy or certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations. What was just once again another fantastic performance from you, and like what we've seen from you before your injury, where you were absolutely fantastic and unplayable in the midfield. This was exactly the performance here. You were involved in the pre-assist, let's say, in terms of getting the goals set up. He obviously got the goal himself, which he took calmly, and just the overall fact that he was just a threat in the midfield, and all of the runs he made from midfield, all of that as a whole was really impressive, and that's the main reason I've given it to him. But when you consider someone like McArthur and Zaha, they both got a goal and an assist between them, obviously assisting each other. But I do think that even though Ruben Loftus-Cheek has only got the goal to show for his performance, I do think the build-up play for both McArthur's and Zaha's goal down that left-hand side, as well as the goal he scored, as well as obviously his threat, I do think for me that does warrant him getting the man of the match award. But do comment below whether you do agree with my opinion, and obviously do comment below with who you thought deserves the man of the match shortlist, or who deserves to win it. But personally for me, I do think it was an overall good team performance, but I do think that these 4 players did stand out for me, especially Loftus-Cheek. But you've got to give credit to the whole team because it was a good overall performance. So now you've heard my match report, player rankings and my man of the match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got interviews with Roy Hodgson, James McArthur and Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Christian Benteke following the game.
James, what a fantastic performance. What are your thoughts on the game?
Complete performance. Looked really, really good going forward, but the attackers are going to get a lot of credit today, and rightly so, but the defenders were instrumental in what gives the attackers a platform to go and do well, and they deserve a lot of credit, them and the keeper.
A goal and assist for you today, involved in the first 2 goals. Talk us through those goals, starting off with the first one.
Johan played a good ball in. I could have maybe played him back, but I heard Wilfried behind me shouting, so try to get it to him somehow, and little back heel got there. The second goal, Wilfried played it. I think he was playing it for Waddy. Waddy was running behind, but I felt that it was a good ball to take into my stride, and thankfully it's went in.
It was that first half performance especially, a great team performance. It's 3 games in a row now, unchanged lineup. Do you think that's helped with the understanding between everyone?
Yeah, but even if there was changes, everyone knows a role in the team. The manager's got us playing really well, really solid, but looked very attacking as well.
You must be pleased with your own form recently. This system seems to really suit your game.
Yeah, it's a position I've not really played until the managers come in, but you know me, I'll try and play anywhere and try and help the team.
And finally, the moment at the end there, Christian Benteke, it was nice that you got the support from the fans and teammates as well.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone was willing up me to score a goal. It'll do him the world of good getting that goal, and confidence-wise, and hopefully he can score another couple. I know there's only a couple of games to go, but hopefully he'll bag another couple before the end of the season.
And that was a fantastic performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, massive performance for the boys, and a massive win, massive 3 points for us. We feel like it's taken a bit of pressure off us. Still 2 games to go, but if we play like that, then I'm sure we'll be fine. So massive well done to the team.
Yeah, the attacking players seem to have a great understanding today. The first half was just free flowing.
Yeah, I think we came out really strong, like Brighton, and I think the fans got behind us, and we took it to Leicester, and I think they couldn't deal with us at times. The speed of passing we was playing, and I think fantastic win, and the boys are really happy.
Yeah, James McArthur involved in the first 2 goals. How good is he to play alongside?
Yeah, I think James's work rate is ridiculous, and if people could see how much he does for the team, defensively and keeping the ball for us, going forward, he's not the quickest, but he's mentally sharp and he's intelligent, and he gets about the pitch. So for me to see that and kind of take things off James is fantastic, and he's doing well. I think us two are kind of playing out of position at times, on the wings, but I don't think we're natural wingers. So for us, to do so well is great.
And for you personally, Gareth Southgate in the stands today, it couldn't have gone better for you, really.
Yeah, I didn't know that before, but I just try to perform no matter who's there. I'm trying to perform for myself and for the team to get the 3 points, and if I can play like that, then it's even better.
And let's talk about your goal. Have you ever scored one like that before when you've been through on the keeper?
I don't think I have. Not professionally anyway. So it's good to good to get on the score sheet.
And at the very end there, Christian Benteke with the penalty, it was a really nice moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm really happy for Chris. It's been tough for him with injuries as well, so it's good for him to get back and take that penalty and score. I think he slipped as well, so yeah, really happy for him.
A great win for the team, but let's talk about the moment at the end there with the penalty. It was nice of your teammates, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very nice of them. The first thing after the goal, I just say thank you to Luca because he said if I want to shoot it, and obviously I say yeah. So I thanks for letting me shoot the penalty, and yeah, the overall performance this afternoon was really good.
The fans wanted you to take it as well. I mean, they were chanting before you even stepped up. That must be great for you as a striker.
Yeah, I think because they know I've been through a hard time. The first time in my career since I'm in England. But yeah, they stick behind me and I'm grateful for that.
And what did you think of watching the performance today?
It was really a big performance today. We really, from the start, we play our game and I think we fully deserve this win.
Club's biggest ever Premier League win, but even more importantly, that was a fantastic performance, wasn't it?
Well, it really came at the right time, didn't it, Chris? I mean, it was a game where not the first time, but I think all of us felt the weight of expectation on us today. We've been playing quite well lately. We've been picking up points. We're playing a Leicester team that, don't have a knife at their throat because they're safe in the league, which of course can prove more troublesome, but not necessarily so. But we really felt the need today to win the game. And I thought we got off to a perfect start with the 2-0. And I was keen at half-time for the players to realise that now we've got to start all over again and make sure that we go out and play the same way and get a win in the second half to put it to bed this match. And I think we were helped by the sending off, but to be fair, it was a very dominant second half performance, and the fact he led to 5 goals, that's a bonus, and also quite an important bonus, because at the end of the day, it will mean that a lot of the teams below us will have to get to 39 points because we now have a far superior goal difference.
Yeah, it was great attacking play and defensive play. Has it helped you that you've been able to pick the same team 3 games in a row?
Yes, and I think it's helped that we've got such a strong bench. There's no doubt that, when players are playing and they look and see the type of guys I'm leaving out of the team who are not getting a look in. I mean, we've got people today like Pab Soiree and Tim Fosu-Mensah who, Gyro Riedewald, they're not even making the bench, quite simply because we have so many players and, they're quality players. So I think that those type of things also help you. Players aren't foolish. They realise when the coach can turn to the bench and replace them if they're not playing quite so well. And I think that keeps everybody on their toes. And it's been a group effort. I've got to say the players right the way through have been fantastic. I think they really deserve this success, if a success it's going to be. And even the ones who've not actually played a part by playing so many 90-minute games, they've done very well too, because their performance in training, their solidarity, their encouragement and support, it's been very valuable to us.
And that showed at the very end with the Christian Benteke taking the penalty, didn't it?
It did indeed, yeah. It was we got the message out that it would be nice if he could take it because, we wanted 5-0, but I'd have settled for 4-0 as well. But I thought that, he's worked so hard to try and get himself back into the form we know he can show through no real fault of his own. It hasn't worked out for him. This happens for players sometimes, especially forwards. They go through bad patches. But he's gone through a bad patch trying very, very hard to come out of it. It just hasn't worked for him. But at least now he's got his goal there, and he's the one who provoked the penalty. So it was just in that respect that he got to take it. And I've got to say I was pretty confident he'd score it, funnily enough.
And finally, for you personally, quite a few different Roy Hodgson chants today, but the one of our own one came out. You're getting good support from our fans, aren't you?
No, it's good. They've been excellent. They've been excellent throughout. I'm really pleased for them. I'm pleased to have them. I'm pleased with the support and the affection they've shown for me right from the off, really. So that's been it's been a nice marriage in that respect. But I think, to be fair too, that we've given them plenty to cheer about this year. I think that in some of the relegation battles in the past have been a bit dour. I don't know that this was a dour relegation battle. I think we've actually got where we are by often outplaying the opposition and playing some very good football. So I think that we've played our part too. They've been behind us, but we've given them something to admire and to cheer and to feel good about as well. So it's been a good period of work together, and we've got one last show together before the season ends, and hopefully by Saturday in 2 weeks' time we'll be pretty much certain of being a Premier League team next year, and we'll be able to celebrate that with the fans, who I sure will turn out in force, even though the game may not have as much on it as this game had today.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what James McArthur and Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Christian Benteke had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Leicester City. But make sure to come back next week for my post-match review of the game against Stoke City. So thanks for listening, and remember to up the Palace.